Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the Suns get set to shine.
Here's Perry, to Gar Hurd. Here's the jump shot.
Jumps to Marley, a long three. He got it! He got it! Into Booker. Here's the three. Suzanne! Oliver, Sir Charles, and he flies in for a wham, bam, slam. Whammo time! He got it! Suzanne! Oh, brother!
Welcome to 7 Seconds or Less. This is a podcast about the Phoenix Suns and the NBA. My name is Max McCauley, and I'm joined as always by my co-host. His name is David Nash. David, how's it going, my man?
It's going very well, Max. A couple of interesting things going on personally for me. I became an uncle today, which is very cool.
Hey, congratulations, man.
And it is also very, very hot here in Melbourne, Australia, which I tweeted about earlier. And for both of those reasons, we're recording a little earlier than we expected. So thanks very much for jumping on with me, Max.
Yeah, no problem. How hot is it?
It is 42 degrees Celsius. I'll put you on the spot. What do you reckon that is in Fahrenheit? I looked it up for you and the listeners before we jumped on.
This is like a really early did you know based on the weather. I didn't expect this. I don't know. It's like 105?
107.6 I'm sitting in at the moment.
That was not a bad guess.
That was pretty good. So I'm happy to stay indoors and talk Suns basketball with you today, Max.
Let's get into it. It's a good time for that because it's time for our monthly awards again, David. We've done this. This is our third time doing this.
Yep.
Going to go through a few awards, a little bit like the normal NBA End of the Year awards, but slightly different, tailored to the team. And then we're going to go into a little bit around the league stuff. We're going to do, it's the new year, Dave. I don't know if you noticed. I don't know if you heard.
It is.
And we're going to make resolutions, not about ourselves because we're perfect. But we're going to make resolutions about NBA teams and players, about what we want to see from them in the new year. 2019, David. It's exciting.
Yep, the Suns are far from perfect, but so are many players and teams around the league. So we'll use that theme for them after talking some Suns basketball, which is hopefully still mostly positive as we like to be, Max.
We're trying really, really hard, guys. really, really hard. David, recap a little bit of what's happened, and then we'll get into our awards.
Yeah, as I said, we're jumping in a little earlier than we normally do, so just the losses to Golden State and Philly since we last recorded, Max. Both of them put up 132 points on us, which is a little concerning, and we might get into that a little bit later. The December recap, we're 5-11 for the month of December, which doesn't sound great on the surface, but is obviously our best month so far, Max, and we don't need to go over the standings or anything like that in too much depth after the depressing way that it ended last episode in terms of where we stand in the division, conference and league. So we'll just jump quickly to the news from this morning of Eric Moreland getting waived as well, Max. I tweeted before I even saw this news had happened that it was likely to happen because the guarantee date for all NBA contracts is coming up on January 10, and he and Richaun Holmes were both non-guaranteed, with that being the date that they become guaranteed. So Moreland goes before we even really knew him, Max, and we're on the clock again to sign a 14th player. I believe it's a 2-week, 14-day window where you need to do that. So we might see another new player in the purple and orange very soon, Max. But any thoughts on that at all?
I know people were rooting for Allen Williams, as was I, because everyone loves Big Sauce, but it doesn't seem like that's in the cards. He's going to China.
Yeah.
And the other one was Shaq Harrison, because the Bulls just made a stupid trade. Not a stupid trade for them. Stupid is not interesting. Mm-hmm. And maybe they would waive Shaq Harrison, but doesn't seem like that's going to happen. They waived Campaign, who we shouldn't sign. So, I don't know. What do you think?
All I think is that we definitely, I'll double down on what you just said. Please do not sign Cameron Payne.
No.
Go elsewhere. Go end of the bench.
Really anywhere.
Big.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess I don't really have any opinion on that. So, David, when is our deadline here? When do we have to sign somebody else?
So it's 2 weeks from today, I guess, which is, I believe, you're in the third in the not so distant past, while I am in the future on January 4. So 2 weeks from there, that takes us well past the January 10 guarantee date, and kind of 17th-ish of January, we should be looking out for someone else to join the roster, either via a free agent signing, which we have a few ways to do that, still with the room exception and vet mins, or it could be a trade, Max.
Yeah, I saw a few people speculating when this happened, like, ooh, does this mean a trade's coming? Man, we really need to get off that. Like, sometimes NBA teams just do like random roster stuff, and usually when a big trade happens, like, they don't announce the waiving of a no-name player 3 hours before. Yeah. Usually that just happens as part of the trade. So I would just to not drive yourself crazy, I wouldn't jump to, hey, a trade's coming every time we do some little move like this. Yeah,
I definitely don't think it's a precursor to that. Obviously, they have 2 weeks, so anything could happen, but I definitely don't think they've moved the spot just to bring in a 2-for-1 that they've already agreed upon or anything like that. But they'll take their time and hopefully add someone of value, and we'll get into that in a minute. But this team still needs talent wherever they can get it, Max.
It really, really, really does. But let's get into our awards anyway. We'll talk about some of the talent and some of the less than talent on these awards. We're going to do the MVP, David. That's normal. We're going to do the best moment a rookie had all month, because if we did best rookie, it'd be Ayton every time.
Yep.
We're going to do the most surprisingly good player, exceeding expectations player of the month.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do the converse of that, or converse, is that the right word? The most disappointing player of the month.
Yep.
And then we're going to do kind of our play of the sixth man of the year. It's going to be who would we want to see more coming forward in January, who didn't play enough in December.
Yep, and it'll be interesting to see how much we double up on things again. I've tried to go a little bit out of the box this time, but we doubled up, I believe, 2 out of the 5 times last time. So, let's jump into it and see where we go with this one.
Well, I'll go right into my not out-of-the-box answer for MVP, David.
Yep.
For the 3rd time in a row, I'm picking Devin Booker because he's the best player on the team.
Yep.
His 10-game averages since coming back are 29.3 points, 4.4 rebounds, 8.0 assists, on a 58.9% true shooting percentage, David. That's really, really good.
That is really good. I've jumped around a little on mine for the 3 times, probably not even keeping to my own rules, but I actually eliminated Booker because he missed 6 games in the month of December, and I'm pumping up the big fella here. DeAndre Ayton is my MVP, Max.
I don't think that's an insane thing to do, especially since you're relying on the fact that they missed that Booker missed 6 games.
Yeah.
I think you would probably agree that if a gun was to your head and you had to or bet all your money on who the actual MVP was, who actually added the most value to the team, it'd probably be Booker. But I like you going outside the box, picking Ayton. Give me a reason.
Well, I mean, we've spoken about his stats quite a bit in the last few episodes, so I won't go over those too much. But for December, Max, we're talking 17.6 points per game, 11.8 rebounds, 4.4 of which are offensive, 1.8 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 60% shooting from the field, Max. So we've just seen today that Luka got nominated as the December Rookie of the Month, which is fair and reasonable for his 16.3 points, 6.6 boards and 5.9 assists, which is just crazy from a rookie ball handler. But Ayton is closing the gap, I'd like to say, on Luka. I don't think he deserved the Rookie of the Month over him, nor do I think he deserves the Rookie of the Year award over him right now. But he's kind of getting closer, Max, and I just wanted to highlight that because if he can keep pushing Luka for these monthly, what are essentially fake awards, which you said privately to me a couple of moments ago, and push him for the official award towards the end, that I don't think that award is over yet.
Yeah, I do think the Rookie of the Month awards are stupid. Tyler Ulis, I think, won one for us one time. So, I don't really care about those. But I will, well, first of all, I'm a Luka stan, so I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that he actually had 21.1 points in the month of December.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. So, a lot of points in the month of December for Luka.
Okay.
Going on to that, yeah. So, I do think the Rookie of the Year race it's not over yet. I think Luka has been the best rookie. He's, he's on. It's going to be hard for Ayton, in large part because Luka's team is so much better. But to be fair, Luka is the best player on that team.
Yeah.
So to a large extent, he deserves credit for it being a better team. And we'll see. If Ayton improves, and we'll get into how much I think Ayton's improved lately. If Ayton keeps improving at the rate he's been improving in December, then, hell, maybe he'll overtake Luka at one point.
Yeah, I've just double-checked that, Max. User error on my part looking at his at a different column on Basketball Reference. You're definitely right with Luka's points there, which definitely makes it probably an even easier choice between he and Ayton for the December Player of the Month. But just jumping back on Ayton, for December, and the reason I'm really trying to pump up his tires here instead of Devin Booker, who, took a leap in his own right, and those stats that you rattled off were pretty impressive for his kind of last 10 or so games. But I think we saw some legit growth from Ayton this month, and he's more aggressive. Some of the quotes we've seen from him, he's kind of quite reflective, and he seems to kind of get it after, I think last episode you highlighted around those interesting times of the Portland game and things, there were some kind of disconcerting quotes, but some of the more recent ones have been positive in terms of him trending in the right direction. And the Orlando OT, I've gone elsewhere for my Rookie of the Year award, but the Orlando OT might be my highlight of December altogether in terms of picking one moment out, Max.
Yeah, well, I guess we should go ahead and go into the rookie moment, because that was mine.
Oh, there you go.
It was the best rookie moment. It really was. Ayton, and also it may be the best argument for him being the MVP, because that was an important game they won, and it was really because he took over in the overtime. I've described it multiple times as being kind of a vision into what DeAndre Ayton could be defensively if he realizes the potential that his tools give him.
Yeah.
He had the block jumper where he stuck with DJ Augustine at the end of that shot clock and blocked it with his length. And then he had a block, I believe it was Evan Fournier drove it in.
Yep.
And DeAndre Ayton really blocked him at the very, very, very top of the arc of the ball. Like, really just ridiculous. Not very many players can do that.
Yep.
It's just showing you, this is why Ryan McDonough and the GM staff was like, hey, we can't pass on this guy because look at these freaking things he can do. And, that's kind of a philosophy they had, where I think McDonough's shown this over a long time, that he tends to lean towards players with the physical attributes more so than the players who are good at the time. And when a player like Ayton shows the growth he's shown in December and, the progress towards realizing those physical attributes, then, hell, it's harder for me to criticize that approach.
Yeah, and I'm really glad. It's funny, again, I know we've mentioned this quite a few times, but we don't talk in preparation for any of these pods, so it's all very much coincidental. So I'm really glad that you're bringing up that Orlando game, and kind of glad that we differed on the first award being the MVP, because that game in itself, particularly for Ayton's early career, probably this season, his rookie season, is kind of the perfect contrast between Booker and Ayton. Booker carried the team for most of that game, should have won the game in regulation for them if it wasn't for some bad calls, which we mentioned last episode. And then Ayton's able to show flashes. We can't expect to put the team on this guy's back and win us games night in and night out. That's Booker's job at the end of the day. And, for your nomination for MVP with Booker is probably well-deserved, because he's really carrying the team for the most part in those important games. But, those little flashes from Ayton that we see, if he can just impact games in a positive way, even just for moments like that rather than over whole games, that's kind of the progress that we're looking for, rather than, those empty numbers that people keep talking about, Max.
No, yeah, 100%. And look, and if you go back to Booker's rookie year, Booker was less valuable than Ayton is right now to his team.
Very true. So, very true.
Yeah, I mean, rookies are not generally good players. It's rare when they are, which is, I would say Ayton actually is a good player, which is impressive, because most rookies aren't.
And nothing highlights that more, Max, than last time we nominated for this rookie award. We're very close to Ali Okobo having a great game. I believe it was against the Clippers at the time, and we both kind of picked moments from that as our favorite moment from last month. So that's interesting. I've gone elsewhere again for this award. Not a specific moment, although I will say shout out to DeAnthony Melton kind of playing the passing lanes. It's a lot of fun watching him stick his hands probably where they shouldn't be and get fast break dunks. Most notably that first quarter against Golden State was a favorite of mine. But I'm going to Igor stand here. We've talked about last episode him being a rookie, so I'm going to throw him in this category. The Suns won 4 in a row and things were fun again for a while there, Max. So the best month so far has been in December, and while he still has his flaws, kind of rotations being the big one, December picked things up a little bit, and that was kind of a fun moment for the Suns to string a few together.
Yeah, it was, and I think I apologized to Igor last episode for criticizing him too much. And then last night I flipped out and had like 4 straight tweets in the first quarter, being angry about the fact that he left people in. So Dave, what do you think about that? I'm sure you went back and watched the game. I think you watched it later.
I did.
Do you think Igor was he trying to let those guys play through things, or what was the rationale behind letting those people stay in the game so long?
Yeah, I think your last point there is exactly what happened. I think in reference to foul trouble, I think we've noted on the pod before, Igor's philosophy with that appears to be leaving guys in and letting them play through things, and it's worked to advantage sometimes with, I think, guys like Devin Booker, who we needed in certain games and kept him in, and that seems to be what happened with TJ Warren last night. Didn't quite work out for the team. And then just overall, one of my favourite sayings, and you quite often hear Igor yell it out if you're listening to the mics during the game, is he just yells out basketball, and that's him basically just saying play basketball. So every set has its initial actions in it, but depending on what the defense does, he really encourages guys to just play and use their instincts based on what he's told them the set play is, but then countering with where they see seams and holes and things in the defense. So I think that overall philosophy from him is he wants his players to become smarter, and part of that is leaving them out in tough situations. I think it's also why we see him, not call timeouts in certain situations where we really expect them and want them to call timeouts. And it's kind of a long-term development thing, because you can't overcoach these guys sometimes, and sometimes you're in moments where you really need the players to take over. So a little frustrating in the moment, but that's kind of what I really take from it, Max, is he's really trying to, develop these guys overall and have them play through disadvantaging situations sometimes.
Yeah, and fair enough, and I get it. It's kind of why I brought it up. But at the same time, man, it's just when these guys get way, way, way down, I don't know if that's good for it. They fought back in this game, and they've been fighting back lately, which is good, but I think you need to prevent getting blown out as much as you possibly can. And also, just the biggest problem I had with it last night wasn't so much that, it was better players needed to come in for worse players. It was more that they just had no energy. They came out of the game flat. And, you insert Oubre and Josh Jackson, who, by the way, Josh Jackson was, an energy bomb last night.
Yep.
He really invigorated the team to come back. If they would have put him in earlier in the first quarter, I wonder if, maybe the team would have turned things around more quickly. But again, I don't disagree with your pick here. I think it's a fun out-of-the-box pick. Igor definitely had his best month as a coach. So yeah, I like your pick, David.
Baby steps, I think we're kind of 20th in net rating over the last 10 games or so, which isn't ultra impressive, but from where we've come from, we're showing a little bit of growth here and there. And I guess just to round that one out, understanding Igor's philosophy or giving my opinion on where I think he's coming from doesn't necessarily always mean that I agree with it. And I definitely agree with your take on that, in that he is a little too slow to call timeout sometimes and make those substitutions. And then there's some contradictions sometimes too. Then he'll go back to the starters at key points of games when the bench unit is kind of what got them in or back in a game. Potentially the Philly game is an example of that. And, I've said before that he really likes to reward guys and let guys play basketball. And if guys are showing energy, he'll keep them in. But then occasionally he'll go against that. So there's definitely some mistakes and even some contradictions there. I definitely don't know all the answers with Igor. I just, from my observations, it seems to be the way that he goes sometimes. But, the last game of the month against Golden State was kind of a key thing for me with Igor and this team. And it was Steve Kerr commenting that, when they did prep for the most recent game, he kind of thought that the team was drastically different this time around from the last time around that they played them. So that's a pretty high compliment coming from, one of the league's best coaches.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that actually. That is nice to hear. And I do think that's true. Even... I obviously have my qualms with Igor, and I've made them known, but he definitely has the team playing a more real NBA style, I guess is the way to put it.
Yep.
And that's nice to see. But we should move on, David. Exceeding expectations player. Do you want to go ahead and give us your guy?
Well, last time we doubled up again with Rashawn Holmes. My guy you mentioned just before, so I'm going to be interested to see what you say here, Max, but I'm going with Josh Jackson.
Interesting. Okay, go ahead and explain.
Well, I'll start by explaining that, this award we've always said is in comparison to expectation. So I'm not going to sit here and argue that he has been amazing in the month of December, but our expectations were going pretty low with Josh, particularly from last month in terms of the way that we thought his game was going and his role was going with the team. And, what we were hoping he was going to do, I think we're seeing signs of that. I think since the Dallas win, so the last 11 games, he's got the best net rating on the team. Wow. Besides, bit part players like Okobo and Daniels. His net rating's 3.2, which tops all the regulars. He and Holmes are in the top 20, I saw on Twitter the other day, in terms of guys in the whole NBA with a defensive differential. So, how the team plays on defense with them on and off the floor. Josh and Holmes are both in the top 20 for the league in that. So he's coming out and playing hard defense, which is, definitely showing on the eye test as well. And, the December box stats don't jump out at you. In terms of his season stats, they're only up 10.3 points versus 8.8, 5.1 rebounds versus 3.9, and 2.6 assists over 2.2, and the percentages are still very, very bad. But, what I will say is that he's kind of eking a little bit further towards that optimum role that you and I have both spoken about with him, but been very skeptical about whether he would actually take on a role like that and be happy doing that. And it looks like he has. He had a net positive in all 5 wins, which he wasn't getting game, plus minus positives at all in the first couple of months of the year. And since Booker's back, he's only taken 10 shots or more once. So he's really, I think he's found his role playing hard, playing defense. And, I've been impressed with him enough to kind of give him a shout out here, Max.
Yeah, I certainly get where you're coming from with this. He has been better. He's been part of some nice energetic lineups. Man, I could never give this award to somebody who had less than a 45% true shooting percentage. Like, he's still unplayable offensively, basically. And that's what's tough with me. And it's so hard with him, David. It's like, I love, like, the encouraging things where, like I said, he's bringing energy and stuff. But, man, if he's that inefficient, he's not an NBA player, David. He's going to be out of the league at some point. And that he's just got to be a lot better than that. Yeah,
and that's why I wanted to kind of preface it as saying that, it's in conjunction with what my expectation was for him for the month.
Well, he was the worst player in the NBA before this month. I think some fans don't want to hear that, but that was the case.
Yeah, and there's some positives. There's definitely still some negatives, as you're pointing out. But, on the back of that conversation we're having about Igor and the team overall, baby steps, I think he's just showing some positive signs. He's not breaking away and taking really bad shots on the fast break as much anymore. Kind of just seems to have slowed down at least just a little bit. The shot is still terrible, and shots don't generally get better during the season, so I don't think we're going to see that drastically get better. But there are signs of other things getting better throughout the flow of a game, and he kind of feeling it out a little bit more. The only other thing I would touch on there is his comments the other day from his diary. I thought were slightly overblown. He's clearly talking about his recent past with the organization rather than his role on the team currently. At least that was my take on it. But did you have any thoughts on that?
I did. For me, it wasn't so much about what he said, which is probably all accurate.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me with like what he said.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's not. First of all, it's not the first time he's said something negative about the Suns. He's done it a few times. And as I tweeted this, it's not a good sign for really anybody, even an NBA basketball player, to blame others for their lack of success, I guess is the way I'd put it. People who are successful generally look inwardly and figure out what they're doing wrong and correct it.
Yeah.
And people who are unsuccessful in life tend to blame others for their faults. And I'm not saying that's what Josh Jackson's doing, but I think that, not doing generally, but in that particular quote, I think it's what he's doing. And that's why I didn't love what I saw from him, but at the same time, I'm not going to, yell about it and say, hey, you're like the worst player in the world, how are you doing this? But I did make this comparison on Twitter, and I think this just stands. It's like De'Aaron Fox went to the freaking Sacramento Kings, and he turned the entire organization around under his personality. Like, you can go to a bad place and make it good. Like, that's a thing you can do, and I think that, Josh Jackson would be better. I'm not saying he's not doing this, but he would be better off focusing on himself rather than on his situation.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a perfect summation of it. He was definitely right in a lot of what he said. I automatically, and I really try hard not to do this, but I just feel like as long as they're both on the team, it's going to happen a lot and a lot. I just automatically thought of a guy like Mikal Bridges, who says all the right things, is a winner, and there's just no way he would come out and say something like that, even if he was, thrust into the worst rookie situation possible.
Yeah, he's one. And then also, how about Devin Booker, who's been in this shit show for... this is his fourth season in it, and has gotten way better every single year.
So, yeah, I don't love him, looking elsewhere for people to blame for, how his career has gone so far. That's not to say that he wasn't right about a lot of the things that he said, but we should move on, Max.
Oh, everything you said's right. I'll real quickly do my exceed expectations. We already talked about it. It's DeAndre Ayton.
Yep.
He just was so good last month, so much better than he's been, in my opinion. He showed me a lot of what I wanted to see on defense and offense. So, yeah, very happy with Ayton, and that doesn't need much more explanation. I'll go right into disappointing player, David. I have a feeling this might be the same as you, but I don't know, maybe not. Let's see. Mine is Mikal Bridges, David.
We are in the same boat on this one again, Max. I will mention last time it was Ariza for me and Jackson for you. So I seem to have a trend of picking guys that are about to leave the team. Hopefully that's not the case.
David, quickly, change your answer to Jamal Crawford.
Yeah, hopefully that's not the case with Mikal, because I will preface the conversation by saying I do not want him going anywhere for a long, long period of time. However, there are some negatives to talk about, which I'll let you jump off on this one, Max, and dive into why Mikal Bridges is your most disappointing player for December.
Yeah, I like that you preface it that way with the it's not all bad thing, because I still think that he's helping on defense. I still like what he's doing. I'm not all mad at Mikal here by any means.
Yep.
For me, it's really just about the damn shooting, especially the slowed down release thing he's doing. As Cole Zwicker pointed out, and I agree with him, it's mostly in the corners where he decides to slow down his release when he has more time. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand why he's doing it. It's the dumbest thing in the world to me. I've never seen an NBA basketball player slow down his release based on how much time he has to shoot. Sometimes you'll see people gather and wait a little bit and then do their normal release, but Mikal is actually slowing down his arm motion.
Yeah.
And it's just, Dave, is there any explanation for this?
I'm not sure that there is. My view on it, and I've said this a couple of times on Twitter, and by the time people are listening to this, there'll probably be a nice bonus to this conversation with our 7 plays or less, which I'm focusing on Mikal, both from the Philly game and then some historical stuff from the last 10 games or so, which will cover a lot of what we're talking about here, so people can go and watch that as well as listen to us talk here on the pod, Max. But it kind of looks to me like a guy who had his shot broken down in the offseason. And we saw those weird videos of him pretty much doing this action that we see from time to time in game. And I looked back through some scouting stuff. I saw some people noted that maybe one negative with his shot was that he brought the ball down too far, and that he wouldn't be allowed to do that coming into the pros from college. And I don't necessarily see the way that he's breaking down this shot as actually fixing that issue at all, because if anything, it's obviously created a much slower motion for him. But it just appears to me as a guy who's very recently broken down his shot, so then when he's not in a really high pressure situation, he kind of repetitively does that on the court. And we're kind of seeing the juxtaposition of when he is in a high pressure situation and needs to get the shot off, it looks really smooth and fluid. It's really only when he's left wide open that we're seeing this kind of weird thing come. And it's very tough on him because, he is a great player. But if we said what we wanted Mikal to do in the starting lineup is basically play defense and hit open shots, and he's not currently hitting open shots. He's actually 31.6 from 3 when wide open, Max, which is 6+ feet is where the nearest defender is. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. That's where it's really obvious, where we're seeing this really herky-jerky shot coming from him. And most of the time the stats kind of back up that it's not going in either, which I'll delve into in that thread on Twitter.
Yeah, I know I saw from Kellen last night 28% on corner threes, which is a really bad percentage on corner threes. It is the easiest 3. 3.
Yep. 17 of 61, I believe it is.
That's really not good at all. That's very bad. And I really think so. He's also missing on a lot of his little, drive-ins at the rim, and also when he pulls up.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that probably stems from the fact that he's not confident. He's not making his threes. And I hate to hammer on this even more, but like, why are these young guys, Markelle Fultz, Mikal Bridges, who have beautiful college shots, coming in and screwing with it? It's so weird to me.
Yeah, it just seems to be kind of striving for perfection, because he had a great shot even with, maybe a couple of little things that could be fixed here and there. And it appears at least that they really tried to break it right down just to fix one or two minor things, which has totally thrown him off course. He's 50 for 149 overall on the season, so 33.3%, which isn't terrible, but for a shooter like him coming out of college, it's definitely not perfect. As you said,
he should be better than that.
The corners are the worst, and particularly the right corner is where he seems to be falling down the most. And as I said, you want him to come in and play defense and hit open shots. He's not really hitting the open shots at the moment. And, the D's been spoken about quite a bit. I think it's slightly overrated, if anything. I think he's great in certain situations, but he's still getting pushed around a bit and really struggling to contain the ball on drives. And as you said, I think he's around league average finishing himself around the rim, but quite terrible in the mid-range and things as well, which is not a great sign for someone that you expected to just be a knockdown shooter coming out of college.
Yeah, and even as we're saying all these things, as you sort of led this whole thing off with, I wouldn't want to lose him, man. I still really, really believe in this guy. I think he's got the perfect personality and work ethic to fix all this stuff. I think he will.
Yep.
Also, even like with him not shooting well, I see stuff I like on offense. I like the way he operates in offense. I like some of the drives he takes. I like some of the pull-ups he takes. It all looks good to me. I just need to he just needs to make the shot. Would be nice. Have the ball go in the basket always helps.
Yeah, probably my favorite quote from Mikal pre-draft was, him saying that he passes up good shots for great shots, and that's kind of what we're seeing sometimes.
No, yeah, definitely, he does. And also, hell, it's not like he's never makes any shots. He had that one I mentioned last podcast in the Denver game where he just casually stepped behind the line and drilled it. And and that's an example of him not thinking about it. I think it was late in the shot clock or something, but he just had to get behind that line and shoot, and it was natural, and he drilled it, and he just needs to stop with this overthinking, this mechanicizing your three-pointers. Just shoot the three-pointer that you know how to shoot.
Yep, one last shameless plug for my thread, Max. There will be a video showing those kind of free-flowing plays where he doesn't think about it, and just look how fluid the shot is compared to when he's left wide open, and how mechanical, as you said, it gets.
There you go. I love when there's video evidence post-pod for my inarticulate points. David, more minutes. Who should get more minutes? The player who's our sixth man. I guess we call it sixth man of the year, but it's really just the player who we think needs to play more.
Last time I said Dragon Bender, which was a horrible miss after getting the first couple right. I believe you said DeAnthony Melton, and his minutes are fluctuating, but I'm sure you're relatively happy with how that's going. Mine's on the back of the Mikal discussion. I'm actually going to say that Kelly Oubre needs to start on this team.
David, we had the exact same answer for this one and the last one.
There you go.
So yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. There's a lot of reasons why I think Oubre should start. First of all, as we sort of just gotten into, he's just a much more confident player than Mikal is right now. Mm-hmm. I think we get off better starts with him. We don't lose anything on defense right now, as you said, he's a little bit overrated. I probably agree with that, and I think Oubre is probably slightly better than him at defense right now, particularly one-on-one, containing drives, stuff like that.
Yeah,
he's definitely better at that right now. He's stronger. He's been in the NBA for a while. Also, and David, this is the part where we might not agree anymore, because I'm gonna, for the first time this entire year, I think I'm gonna give the first TJ Warren criticism of the podcast. Are you ready?
Ooh, it's long overdue.
Yeah, we haven't had one yet. So this is just think back to the Philadelphia 76ers first quarter that just happened the other night.
Uh-huh.
When TJ totally disappears, which still happens sometimes, we really need another person to do something on the floor. And right now, Melton and Mikal, I like their defense. I like their team defense especially. I like some of the things they do. They don't do anything. Oubre could do things when he gets the ball late in the clock, he'll drive, he'll make something happen. Right now, man, I like TJ Warren, and this is going to get into a bit of TJ rant. I don't know if you want to respond to this or not, but this is kind of why I think TJ Warren shouldn't start, because when he does his disappearing act thing and he's not scoring, he doesn't do anything else. He's bad on defense and he doesn't make any plays. So the improved 3-point shooting is good. I guess he spaces the floor a little bit more, but like you really need somebody like doing something alongside Booker and Ayton, and when TJ's not scoring, that guy's not there. All right, I'll let you respond to any of that you want to, David.
No, I think it's a fair point. For all his improvements, TJ is still kind of is who he is in terms of his overall role in the NBA. He hasn't made huge strides on defense. The 3-point shot is great and has meant that he is more playable in the modern NBA, but it doesn't necessarily make him a totally new archetype of a player. He's still, an ultra efficient scorer who looks for his own more than anything. I did note the other day that they seem to be doing a better job sometimes of including him in the offense and running plays for him. I think that's been, slow progress, probably because I don't think they even expected this improvement coming from TJ. So they've kind of slowly started to work him in. But yeah, I kind of put it more on Igor than TJ himself. I think he needs to do a better job of making sure that TJ doesn't disappear because, yeah, if he's not scoring, he's not providing that threat, he is, relatively useless on the court. Which, brings the question, if we are going to start Oubre, Max, you've kind of got two options here. You go with Melton, Book, TJ, Oubre, Ayton, or you go back to point Book, leave Mikal in there and leave TJ in there as well. I guess there's a third option. You're advocating for maybe TJ going back to the second unit, but I lean going back to point Book to leave Mikal, his shooting, his defense in there. I don't think you can take TJ out at this stage, but also getting Oubre in there.
Yeah, no, I'm not advocating TJ going to the bench. I think long term I am. I think that we've seen long term that's probably where it needs to be. I'd take Mikal and put him on the bench. Not in the most Mikal, we're not doing this because you're bad kind of way. We just think that this makes more sense for our team and let Mikal play against second units. I think that may be a better spot for him anyway.
Yeah.
Because his whole slightness thing where he can't contain drive and stuff, that would be not as much of a problem, not against starters.
Yeah.
But for me, I would leave Melton in, but one thing I would do is you don't have to necessarily make Melton the point guard when he's in there, even if he is a point guard, technically.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that I think Igor's gotten away from, which I don't really agree with, is I think we've gotten away from point Book too much. We're not doing it enough, and you could do it with Melton on the floor, and that's what I would do. I would start Melton, Booker, Oubre, TJ, and Ayton, and I would have Booker run the point a little more. Melton can have his possessions here and there, but I mean, I think that at the start of the Sixers game, it was all Melton bringing the ball up and running the offense, which I don't really get that at all. Like, I love Anthony Melton. Everyone who listens to this podcast know that. But he's like super raw on offense, man. Like that guy should not be running your offense at all, really.
Yeah, that's kind of Igor maybe falling into traditional positions a little bit, and he's kind of like, well, if I'm going to start him, he has to be running the point for me.
Well, he also really doesn't want Booker to be the point guard. He just doesn't think that's what
Yeah, so yeah, I think you're right. We could probably see Book, particularly early on to start games, seeing as though we're starting so poorly at the moment. You kind of want to see Booker running the offense a little bit more. You can just plug Melton into an off the ball shooter and defending opposition ones. So yeah, I think as long as Melton is in the starting lineup for the foreseeable future, I'm definitely advocating for Oubre to go in over Mikal, just so that you're not starting three rookies, and as you said before, you don't have a couple of guys that really aren't contributing much at all to the starting lineup. But back on Oubre a little bit, we both nominated him here, so we should talk about him and his game a little bit more. I think he's averaging 25 minutes a night for Phoenix since he's arrived, and if you take the 42 minutes out that he played in that Washington game, he's only played 26, 19, 30, 24, 12, 21, 23. So it's not quite enough minutes for mine based on where this roster is with its talent, and it's also a little too up and down and not allowing him to kind of settle into rhythm. And I noted on the last pod, I think it was, that he's probably still learning a lot, which is making Igor's job hard of getting him into games on a regular basis. But since joining, he's 16.3 points per game over 36-minute averages, and he's probably, as you were alluding to, a more dangerous option with the starters, someone that can get to the bucket, someone that does need to be defended off the dribble. You add in his defense there and his ability to attack the rim. I just think it's a move that we really have to consider making.
Yeah, I agree with your reasoning, and there's another really strong reason to do it, in my opinion, and that's, you have to make a decision on this guy before anybody else.
Yes.
You got to figure out what you want with this guy, and the number one way to figure out, if Kelly Oubre is somebody you want to keep long term is to play him with, your two pieces are your long term pieces, and Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton.
Yep.
So you start them and you see what those guys look like together, because, man, at this point, really, we're not going to make the playoffs, obviously.
Yes.
That's long gone. At this point, the goals are to get Devin Booker to the All-Star game and then to figure out whether or not Kelly Oubre and anybody else you have to make a quick decision on. So I guess Rashawn Holmes will be somebody, and Melton will be somebody coming pretty soon after that. And I guess Jackson, too. You start figuring out, are these the guys that you want to keep around? Because that's decisions that are coming. And that's really what we're in here. We're in evaluation stage.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of lean to maybe going back to point book to just optimize things as much as possible until they maybe bring in a point guard. I think they're probably looking at it, and some fans might look at it and go, that really thins out the bench. Then you've kind of got Holmes, Melton, Jackson, and one of Crawford or Okobo probably coming off the bench. But not to harp on the point too much, I'd still love to see Igor stagger things a little bit more rather than run 2 units. And if you put your 5 best guys in the starting lineup and then start to kind of stagger them and just insert those energy pieces here and there, you're going to have the most competitive team on the court. And that's goal number 1, as you said, for the rest of the season, is to basically get as much information out of these guys that you have to make decisions on, and also put the absolute best product on the floor to give yourself the best chance in free agency and things, Max.
Yep, I think that's right. That's all I got to say about it. What do you think? Are we done with the awards? Ready for Did You Know?
I think we are. I'll jump into it. So, Max, with December now done and dusted and the Suns working their way through a January schedule, I wanted to take you and the listeners back to the Suns' longest ever winning streak. It is tied for 16th longest in the NBA, the longest being the 71-72 Lakers, who won 33 in a row, Max. But did you know the 06-07 Suns set the franchise record for wins on the trot from December 29 until January 29 in that season? Now, I've given you a couple of small clues in terms of 33 being the most ever and the Suns streak happening over a month time span, but any guesses how many that team won in a row, Max?
I know we lost to the Timberwolves to end it.
Ooh, you do, yep.
Man, was it like 16?
Oh, one off. It was 17. 9 away and 8 at home. But funnily enough, they broke the franchise record twice in that same season. Just 10 or so days earlier, the Suns finished rattling off a 15-game winning streak. The last win in that streak was over the Toronto Raptors, who had the recently departed Brian Colangelo as their general manager. Quick aside, Max, Mike D'Antoni took over as our GM when Colangelo left, and after signing Jalen Rose on November 7, 2006, the Suns never made another roster move until Steve Kerr joined as GM.
Wow.
That was drafting Rudy Fernandez on June 28, 2007. So over 6 months, including these winning streaks with no roster changes. I guess you don't need to mess with something that's working, Max. But back to the winning streak. That one was ended by the Washington Wizards in an OT thriller where Gilbert Arenas scored 54 points, a team we had our own OT thriller against this December, Max. The 17-game streak then began 10 days later, as I said, on December 29 against the New York Knicks, another team we beat this December, Max. During the streak, the Suns averaged 25 threes a game. That's attempts, a mark that would only be good enough for equal 28th this season. However, they did jack up 43 in that OT loss to the Wizards just prior, which would edge out the Houston Rockets' current season average of 42.6 threes a game. We've come a long way, Max. Now, the Suns' big three of Nash, Marion, and Mare were pretty incredible during the 17 wins. Nash was classic MV Steve, averaging 19 and 12.4, shooting a ridiculous 49.5% from three. Marion was classic Matrix with 17.4 points, 11.5 boards, 1.5 assists, 2.6 steals, and 1.2 blocks. And Amari was Amari, 20.7 points, 10 boards, 1.7 blocks, 59.3% from the field, Max. The streak, as you said, was ended by Kevin Garnett and the Minnesota Timberwolves, another team we got a W against this December. Garnett had 44 points and 11 rebounds, and the Suns went down 112 to 121. I've mentioned Garnett on this pod quite a bit in reference to Ayton Max. Garnett had a pretty subtle rookie season, only averaging 10.4 points per game, but he had one game of 33 points, which just so happens to be Ayton's current high also, which of course he set in this month of December. One less test for you here, Max, to end. Steve Nash was quoted during the 17-game winning streak as saying this about the Lakers' record 33-game winning streak. People don't talk about the 33-game streak. They talk about who won the championship that year. I don't feel unbeatable. We've got a lot of improving to do. The Lakers went on to win that year, but as we all know, the Suns did not in 2007, Max. So how far did the Suns go in 2007, and who ended up winning the title?
You're really good at bringing this up to me, David. This is going to be earth-shattering. We lost in 6 games to the San Antonio Spurs after David Stern screwed us.
Yep, and who went on to win the title?
Oh, fuck you, David. The Spurs.
What could have been, Max? What could have been?
Yeah. They had a free title too because they went through the Utah Jazz and then the Cleveland Cavaliers, which was neither of those teams were any good.
Yep, and that's what could have been for the Phoenix Suns.
You know what else could have been? That was the year the Golden State had that really fun team with Baron Davis that upset the Mavs, and I was thinking that it was going to be the Suns Warriors in the conference finals, which would have been like the most fun conference finals ever. Instead, we got the Spurs and the freaking Jazz.
That would have been super fun and something that I'm sure in this day and age, mentioning with all the threes and things, a series that would be looked back on very well, I'm sure, in terms of prefacing the next kind of decade or so of basketball.
Yeah, people probably would have been like, so the reason why the league changed is because of this series.
We changed the NBA forever. That's it, Max. On to a quick around the association segment before we finish off.
Yeah, no, bizarro world. But as you mentioned, we're going to go to around the league. We're going to do some New Year's resolutions, David. This will be fun. We're going to each pick one East team and one West team and one East player and one West player and talk about what we want to see from them and the resolution for them going forward.
Yep.
So David, how about you start with your East team?
All right, my East team is someone that I predicted to win 50 games before the season started, Max,
okay.
And that is not looking good. I'm calling this how New Year's resolutions, everyone's got the I'm going to get healthy this year kind of resolution. I'm calling this the I'm going to get healthy award, and that goes to the Washington Wizards, who I am saying just need to pull the pin, blow it up, get yourselves healthy. You're not going anywhere. Maybe trade Trevor Ariza again. Trade one of Beal or Porter, because I don't think you're going to be able to trade John Wall. And they need to start again, Max, and get healthy, as I said.
Well, I certainly agree with all of that. Yeah, the Washington, man, I don't know what their plan is, because they really made that win now trade right before John Wall was declared out for the year. So, man, that front office just must be in shambles. What the hell are they? Are they even? David, you know what I'm trying to say here? What the hell are they thinking about? It's just hard for me to even understand how they're planning out their future.
I think it's a perfect example of a front office that feels pressure from ownership to continue to compete. They're in the lowly East. They can probably itch out a playoff spot, probably be a first round exit, and at least have it look somewhat good as an outcome. But for what my expectations were for this team, they've definitely underperformed so far. And I think it was announced today that Markieff Morris is out for 6 weeks. So
I didn't see that. Jesus.
The blows keep on coming, but it'll be interesting to see whether a Wall-less team actually competes harder and maybe even competes better than what they were with John Wall.
You think these billionaire genius businessman owners would be smart enough to be like, hey, we should just do this with our team, but I guess not. Anyway, so mine's very different from yours, David. Mine's very happy.
Alrighty.
Mine's just more about hey, we're good. We need to make another move here. Our resolution's to take this team from good to great.
Yep.
And this is the Indiana Pacers, David.
Ooh, I like it.
They're 25-12. They are the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference right now, ahead of Philly and Boston. They are 2 games out of the best record in the entire NBA.
Flying under the radar. I think I mentioned them when we scheduled the new Xmas Day games last episode of, you rattle off the best 4 teams in the East in the NBA, and the Pacers are generally missed in, replacement for, I think, Toronto, Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly are the first 4 that everyone always rattles off. But Indiana are very impressive. They've done some of it without their franchise guy, and you're probably right. They're probably just a small move away or something from really making some noise in the NBA.
I've got a big move for him, David, and it ties right into your team. They should go get Bradley Beal. Go do it. That's a perfect fit with Oladipo. They'd be awesome together. That'd be so much fun. And that team can win the East with Bradley Beal on that team. They really can. They're that good. Depending on what they give up for him, but they could be really, really good, David.
Yeah, I mean, we've often talked about them needing to maybe separate Turner and Sabonis at some point, so maybe that's a piece that goes in there, to make the Wizards at least interested in the offer. But yeah, I like it. I think that would be an all-in move. The East certainly seems, wide open at the moment. So small market teams like that, they got to go for it when they can.
Yeah, you don't get free agents if you're Indiana.
Exactly.
And I love the Oladipo Beal thing so much because, there's not a weakness there. Those two, both of them do everything. It'd be quite a backcourt. It'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, obviously you're missing a true traditional, point guard if you're running them as the backcourt, but the advantages would probably far outweigh that, because at the moment they're, kind of got placeholders there with guys like Collison and Joseph. And
yeah, I mean, David, show me the true traditional point guard right now who's killing the NBA.
Exactly.
All right, let's do your player now, David. Who you got in the East?
All right, well, this kind of on the back of what you just said in terms of Indiana's not going to sign any free agents in the offseason. Another market that is a smaller market, and this would certainly be a win for the small markets. I'm giving my Maintain the Rage award to Kemba Walker in the East, and that's, Charlotte are about to host the All-Star weekend, I believe. He is very much in line for his 3rd straight All-Star appearance with, a career year, 25.4 points per game at the moment. If he can carry them to the playoffs, maybe even win a series, then, I think team and player will sign a big deal in the summer, and, that'll be a win for both. I think Kemba deserves to be paid, close to his max, and Charlotte, as you said with Indiana, aren't going to be signing many upcoming free agents to that market. So maintaining a guy like Kemba would be a win for them as well.
This is too much fun, David. as you always say, we don't talk about this beforehand.
Oh.
And I don't know if this is going to prove that or make people question about that. My guy's Kemba Walker, and I have the exact opposite resolution for him, David.
Let's do it. Tell me what else he should do to start 2019.
I'm thinking that Kemba needs to look in the mirror and be like, you know what, Kemba, you're awesome. You deserve more than Charlotte. I need to see you on a good team.
Interesting.
You need to realize that you don't need to be loyal to this shit team. It's kind of like a girl whose boyfriend sucks. Like, honey, you're awesome. You don't need to be with that loser. I'm saying that to Kemba right now. You don't need to be with that loser.
So you're telling me when All-Star Weekend hits Charlotte, he's not going to be trying to take people around town, showing them how great Charlotte is as a city, and instead is going to be having secret conversations with which All-Stars want him to demand a trade to their team.
Well, I'm telling you, it's a damn good thing to move the trade deadline to well before, so it's not awkward when he visits DeMarcus Cousins to get traded during the All-Star game. I think he should try to get somewhere good. I'd love to see him on the Pacers or Bucks.
Yep.
But the team I really want to see him on, David, I think they should send him to Denver. I think Kemba should just try to get to Denver because that would be awesome. That team's so close. And, man, with Kemba, I think they might be challenging the Warriors.
Ooh, that is very interesting. How does that look with Murray, Harris?
I think Murray's the guy.
Ooh,
that's who you trade him for.
Wow, they're super high on him. That would be huge.
I'm not Nate Duncan, David. I can trade Jamal Murray.
You can do whatever you want. This is our podcast. We can do and say Great whatever point. The hell we want. I like it, though. I think, I was angling for a win for the small guys there, but, talents like Walker, I think, you'd love to see them paired up with some other stars, but if they can't make that happen, he better damn well get the max out of Michael Jordan and Charlotte.
Yeah, let me be real clear here. I'm almost positive what you said is going to happen. I think it's nice. Kemba Walker is the best player in their franchise history. I think it's cool how he wants to be there. I think it's awesome. They're going to give him way too much money, and he's going to it'd be a really bad 5th year of that deal. But you know what? Sometimes sports isn't all about winning a championship. So cool.
Yeah, and I'm finding myself empathizing with the small markets. Phoenix in the past has been maybe somewhere in the middle, edging towards one of the bigger markets. But the way we're looking at the moment, I'm really trying to root for the small guy, because these kind of decisions are probably going to come up for Phoenix in the next few years. And if we don't turn things around drastically, we're going to be the sulky supporters who've lost our franchise guy, Max.
Yeah, that would be sad, wouldn't it? In fact, I don't even want to think about it. So why don't you just go on to your West team?
My West team is the Dallas Mavericks, Max, and I am saying, a lot of people hit the new year and say, I want to travel more in 2019. So I'm calling this the Go Traveling Award. And not that Luka Doncic travels on the basketball court, Max, or should be trying to travel more a la James Harden, although that wouldn't be a bad philosophy to take for someone like Luka. But they are 3-16 away at the moment, Max, and on the playoff bubble, and they really need to improve that for the back half of the year if they've got any aspirations to make the playoffs. So I'm saying they need to travel more, they need to win more away from home, and maybe how they do that is a trade. We've seen Dennis Smith Jr., his name kind of raised in the media recently. I put them up for a trade idea in one of our recent episodes, and I think they just need a little bit of a circuit breaker and to try and start winning away from home, Max.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Is there any reason, do you think, why Dallas has been bad away from home, or is it just really random variance? It's very strange how they're that bad away from Dallas.
Unless the whole team's like Devin Booker and loves the lights in the Dallas stadium and just shoots the lights out. I haven't delved too much into it outside of the actual record itself, but they do appear, they're a strong team with its weaknesses, and certainly the kind of team coached by Rick Carlisle that is a real force at home, but kind of things get away from them a little bit when they travel away.
Yeah, if I had to guess at it, and this is just totally off the cuff, but it may be because they don't really have, other than Luka, who's a rookie, like a guy who can settle down the offense.
Yep.
And just get a shot.
Yep.
They don't have that at all, so that may be what it is. I agree with you though. I would like to see Dallas make any kind of move, because they don't have their own pick this year. It goes to Atlanta, unless it's top 5, which it probably won't be. So they should go for it. Makes sense.
Yep. What's yours?
Mine is, and I just alluded to them in the Kemba thing, but not just Kemba. The Denver Nuggets. I think they should go for it. I really do. Because even if Golden State to me looks a little bit beatable, but even if they're not beatable this year, they're probably going to be beatable next year. I don't think Durant's staying. I'd be surprised if he is.
Yeah.
If I'm them, I'm accelerating this thing because they're the best. They have the best record in the West right now.
Mm-hmm.
As we've seen with OKC this year, sometimes when you acquire a star level player, it takes a while to get him acclimated.
Yep.
PG-13 is way better now than he was last year, and if I were them, I would go get themselves a star now. I would use this season to acclimate the guy, to do as best you can in the playoffs. Hopefully, try to make a conference finals, get that experience, get Jokic on, get that under his belt, and then next year when Golden State falls off, which I think will happen, just be ready to sort of be the next team in the West.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think I see Denver quite a lot like Philly of the East in terms of being that kind of underdog from where they've come from, really star hunting. I think their general manager, Tim Connolly's always been trying to make moves either in free agency or via trade to really get over the hump. They've got a great team at the moment that they're kind of putting out on the park, and, a great record in the West. But yeah, I think it's a good point by you. The West is kind of open, like we haven't seen it for a little while.
Yep.
Golden State looking a little shaky. LeBron, they haven't made a move yet. They may not make a move this season. So, before any change with Golden State, or before LeBron gets settled in LA with another superstar maybe next year, this is a time for Denver to have a crack and see where they can end up if they make a big move. Because as good as the team is right now, I can't see it, beating one of those two teams in a playoff series.
Nope. And they had this really interesting, weird trade chip in Michael Porter Jr. that they should be super willing to move, in my opinion.
Ooh.
They should definitely be willing to move that guy, because he's really just kind of found money for them. And if they can convince him convince a team to be really into him and part with, say MPJ and Gary Harris for a star player, they should do that. because this team's kind of ready to win now, and I'm not a big Michael Porter Jr. helping anytime soon guy.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think that's a great one.
All right, how about your West player, David?
My West player is a make new friends resolution, and it goes to James Harden of the Houston Rockets. He has been crazy good lately, Max. He's averaging 33.3 points this season, which is a career high. CP3 is unhealthy. The rest of the roster can't compete at the pointy end of the playoffs as good as they're playing right now, and Harden's players kind of got them out of the doldrums of where they were going in the West. They still don't look like a great playoff team. There's rumblings around Knight maybe having a pick or two attached to him to get him off the books. I think Eric Gordon is still the positive salary piece there for them to maybe make a significant move. I keep being surprised that Carmelo Anthony keeps getting listed as, inactive when they're playing, and I think that's purely because if they waive him, maybe there's a chance that someone can pick him up on waivers, and they don't want that to happen, so they're actually waiting to maybe trade him somewhere if he gets any interest anywhere. But yeah, they're a watch this space. I think Harden needs some new friends if he wants to do any damage in the West this year.
He does, although he is single-handedly ruining my prediction that they'd be the 8th seed.
Which I think at the time is what I said, is even if everything went bad, if they still had James Harden, they're probably still a top 4 team in the West.
Yeah, and that's proving right because, man, I tweeted this the other day, like, James Harden is positioning himself for another MVP right now. He really is. If that team is in the top 4, and he keeps up this, I think lately he's at 40 points a game or something like that in the last, last 10, which is just absurd. Like, the dude is insane. He's so damn good. And I see these polls where, like, at their peak, who's a better offensive player, James Harden or Kobe Bryant? Like, goddamn, if you think it's Kobe Bryant, you're just wrong. Look at the damn stats. Watch him play.
I think Lakers fans are the only ones that would probably be voting that, and that's probably why they can still win polls like that, because there is a lot of Lakers fans.
Unfortunately, that is true, David.
What's yours? Finish us off here.
Mine is a player who you love, who I love.
PG!
His name is Paul George. Yeah, you guess it just based on how much we love him. Here it is, David. Go for the MVP, Paul George. Go for it.
Yep.
I saw that he convinced Russ to play defense this year, which is amazing. That's almost MVP worthy in itself. But I think you should convince Russ to kind of turn the offense over to him too. Like, I don't want to see Paul George just be the full centerpiece of this team. Russ be the secondary, creator, defender guy. I don't know if you ever convinced Russ to do that, but maybe. But man, Paul George is already an MVP candidate, and if he could just push the next level on that whole thing, I really think it could happen, and it would be really freaking cool to see Paul George stay at OKC and then win an MVP. I can't think of a much better story than that.
It'd be another win for, so-called small markets, even though I saw Russell Westbrook say he doesn't believe in small markets. It's only small minds or something like that.
I wouldn't believe in the small markets either if my team had the highest payroll in the NBA.
Exactly. I guess the only thing I'd push back on that is Russell Westbrook is shooting low 30s from the field and 29% from 3. So, I think he kind of needs the ball in his hand, or else he's not even an NBA player right now on offense. So
that's fair. But I will say he is a first-team All-NBA defense kind of guy right now, the way he's playing defense. He's been really good at that.
But, maybe keep Paul off ball as much as possible, because the thought of Westbrook just shooting open jumpers and things is not a good one right now. But I don't need to repeat it. I love Paul George. He's probably my favorite player in the NBA that's not a Phoenix Sun. I'm very much enjoying his rise. And as you have noted quite a few times on this pod and on Twitter, the MVP race is wide open. So Paul George is, it's well within his reach to just go and grab it.
Yep, it's him. I think if they get to the 1 seed, I think that he's a really strong candidate. It's between him, Giannis, and James Harden right now.
Yep.
All right. I think that's it, David. You ready for 7 seconds or less?
I am. Do you want to run over the rules very quickly?
Let's do it. 7 seconds or less is the segment where one of us asks the other 3 questions for which the other has 7 seconds or less to answer and has not prepared beforehand. David, I think it's your turn this week to ask me the questions, right?
It is, and we're going to keep the New Year's resolution theme, Max. So I will maybe give you a little longer than 7 seconds, as we generally always do, because you might have to do some thinking on these. But keeping that theme, what is your biggest resolution for the Phoenix Suns for 2019?
Wow, that is a big question. I think my biggest resolution for the Phoenix Suns for 2019 is just to keep this thing going they have lately, where even if they're not playing very well, they're still competing and they're staying in these games, and we're not seeing the head dropping.
Yeah.
And just the utter quitting that we were seeing earlier. Remember when I spent like a month and a half in this podcast yelling about how we need a leader?
Yes.
Like, I don't want to yell about that anymore, and I haven't lately because it hasn't been, as imperative, I think. Because at least they're trying and they're being scrappy, and even if they're not good, I just want them to keep, doing this.
Yeah, and they're kind of leading as a collective, and,
right.
and I've noted that a few times, that they are fighting through games. As baffling as some of these deficits are early in games, it's great to see them fight back. So that's a great one. I like that one. Again, keeping the theme for question 2, though, this time pick a specific player and give me one resolution they should be focused on for the rest of this season, Max.
It's going to be repetitive of things we've said before, but for me, it's Josh Jackson. Mm-hmm. Focus on what has made you more useful in the past month. Focus on that energy thing, that defense thing. Focus on not taking bad shots. Focus on your secondary playmaking thing. Watch the tape. See why you were effective over the past month. Igor should be the one who's showing him these tape, what's going on, and just do that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, and sorry, this is going to go way over 7 seconds. I think a lot of players, particularly players who went in the top 5 of drafts, they fancy themselves as stars.
Yep.
And they're going to be stars, and I'm sure Josh X has that in his head for understandable reasons. But I think you need to, put in the back of your mind, I can still be a star someday, and realize I need to become a good NBA player now, and focus on that.
Yep, I like it. And jumping forward a bit now, and there might be some repetition here again, but although you might surprise me, 2019 obviously covers 2 seasons of NBA basketball, Max, so let's jump ahead to December 2019. Give me one contracted Suns player you are very confident will not be on the roster at that point in time, and one non-Suns player you would be the most confident will be on the roster, Max.
Interesting. So by contracted, you mean somebody who has a contract for next year?
Yeah, I don't want you kind of saying Dragon Bender, for instance.
That was the first name that popped in my head. Very, very well done to preempt that. Oh, man, that's tough. Actually, I think I found a sneaky way around it. Ryan Anderson, I think, is my answer.
Ooh, yes, you caught me out. I didn't put enough notes in to stop that one. So, yep, so they're going to waive him.
Yeah, they'll waive him. I'm trying to think of somebody who's not a cheat answer for you, but it's not coming to mind right now. So, sorry, you're getting the cheat answer.
That's fine.
And then the player who I think would make... that's a good one. You know what? I think it's going to be somebody we've talked about a lot in this podcast. It's because of the connection with Devin Booker. It's because of the glaring hole in his position. It's D'Angelo Russell, I think, is the most likely guy to be on the team.
Yep, I like it. And that is the end of 7 seconds or less.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. Please rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps. In fact, David, you wanted to point out a few people who have reviewed us lately.
Yes. Ruler, I believe it is, Replica Ryan, and Slowbub all gave us reviews, all gave us 5-star ratings, and we are just one off our short-term goal of 55 stars. So if you're listening to this, you get a chance to jump on, be number 50, and we will read out probably your whole review if you do that as well next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Even when we don't read it out on the podcast, I can assure you that David and I talk about it privately, and we love all your reviews, and we cherish each and every one of them because it's awesome that people love what we're doing. It makes us feel great.
And we love feedback.
We do, yeah. Hey, I'll put this out right here right now. If you give us a 5-star review, you can give us a piece of constructive criticism in there too. That's fine.
Love it.
It doesn't be all glowing. Just give us 5 stars. You can say whatever the hell you want.
Yep.
David, thank you. I don't know if there's anything else for you to say. I think we might be having a special guest soon. He's been on before. He's my favorite person to have on. So look out for that.
Yep, and we didn't have a guest on this time, as we said, but that was probably my fault with the rescheduling of things. But yeah, we will have some guests coming up when they make sense. And the Suns finish off their homestand against Charlotte and Sacramento after playing the Clippers, who we may have already played by the time people are listening to this podcast, Max. So I will talk to you and the listeners again very soon.
Yeah, people were wondering why we aren't talking about the 30-point blowout of the Clippers that we had. Thanks, guys.